for someone who wants to do the best they can for children. Chris, thank you.
Thank you. So my name is Chris Pienaar, and I'm Chief Executive of Derbyshire Autism Services, and also one of two representatives on the new Integrated Care Board for the voluntary sector. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So this is a workshop, so we're not intending to talk at you. We're really hoping that you'll jump in with questions and discussion and reflections, which would be great. So if I just start to talk through the slides, and hopefully that will just form the basis of some of that conversation, that'd be great. So Derbyshire, here we are. So children with ND needs. So how bad was it? You probably, it'll make your eyes water. So the waiting list, as you can see, is up to 2 years for an autism assessment. There's nearly 4,500 children who were waiting in July last year. We just couldn't get our head around it. Referrals were absolutely huge. I think prevalence for autism is 1%. Our clinicians told us we should probably expect about 8 to 10%. And actually referrals were at about 27% of the population. So they were just massive. We get loads of MP letters, inquiries, freedom of information around the waiting list. Schools, GPs, families, they come from all over the place. And I think the real kicker was when we failed our SEND inspection. I think that was in 2019, I think. And as a result of that, in Derby City, we had a written statement of action, and the ND waiting list was a massive part of that. Thanks, Joe. Skip us on. So just as a perspective, really, what became really clear really quickly was that we needed to understand different people's perspective and to jointly agree a way forward. Appreciate that was going to be difficult. We all seem to be speaking different languages. Co-production was not something that came natural to us as a what used to be a CCG, now an ICB. Patience was important. My background is within the banking world. If you want something done, you just get on and do it. It's super quick, and that very quickly learned that that's not how it happens in the NHS. And then just to keep that focus, really, I quite often talk about the anchor. What's the anchor that we're all coming back to? And when you do your courses on system influence and system change, they teach you to establish your anchor point, don't they? And that's the one thing. So when people start to lose sight of where you are, that's what you come back to. Is there anything you want to add at that point, Chris?
No, I think it's just I suppose in one sense that having the inspection and those results probably was partly accepted and understood, but also still comes as a bit of a shock to get that. And I think it is a case where something that was not good news and quite hard helped, actually, because it helped get the level of support probably that was needed to really get stuck in and find out what was wrong. And then your point about patience and all speaking different languages. I have a background, my background is in development and with autism, but the thing that really struck me is the diversity of the people involved in the multi-stakeholder system, you know, that the people that all came to the workshop. So first of all, fantastic that they came, and you'll be talking about that more now. But the fact that even the language, you know, people are using language and terminologies and things that one may not have heard. And then if you talk about certain concepts that may have been typical third sector views, it was hard for others to even understand sometimes. And so hence the patience to listen and believe people, and then take time if we needed to set aside a second meeting just to understand that. Just then spend that time. Don't rush ahead. Stop and talk until we all understood and agreed, and then carry on. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I've just seen, so Matthew's put a comment in, Kent, their waiting times are huge as well, so 3 years plus. We know it's a national problem, and yeah, it's a nightmare. Thank you, Joe. Can you flick us on to the next slide? So Chris and I felt this slide was probably one of the most important ones around fears. So, from my own personal perspective, I knew things were bad. I knew things were really bad. So, but I wasn't quite sure why they were as bad as they were. So from a personal perspective, I've been in the room with parents before when they've been there going, why have you let it get so bad? And what are you going to do about it? You don't care about us. And so I know how that feels. And I know that I can't justify where we are. I could sit there and go, well, it's not my fault, I wasn't here. But that does not wash with children and families. Everything that you're taught as a professional about how people should behave and how people should talk to you just goes completely out the window when you're talking to real people and families and children. So took a lot of time for me to think. So when that inevitability comes, when the finger's pointed at me and I'm put on the spot, what am I going to say? How do I respond? So that was kind of the personal fears, and the part of you thinks, oh, I don't really want to ask because I don't really know what they're going to say. I don't really want to hear what they're going to say, and I certainly don't want to be shouted at. And then the professional fears, really. So what if we can't fix it? I mean, a 3-year waiting list. What? How on earth are you going to sort that out? We've got no money. No one's got any money. What is it? So what do I do when they ask for things and I can't promise them and I can't deliver them? So there's that. But and the clinical risks are massive, and again, you just can't justify it. Also really mindful, procurement is the big thing, isn't it? That the rules haven't changed. You still have to go into that room and lock the door and do your procurement process. So how are you going to be open and honest in the way that you co-produce? And that's something that I think we've kind of come to terms with a bit, and something that we've got a joint understanding on, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Did anyone want to come in at that point? Has anyone got any reflections on what might be holding them back? No, everyone's very quiet. Oh, hooray, Matthew!
Oh yeah, you're right.
Hiya.
So yeah, I think obviously one of the main issues is workforce. I think nationally we're seeing not only a low workforce but a continuous reduction, and that is due to obviously there's people retiring, there's people changing careers, there's people leaving due to stress, people as you've already stated, people are looking at it and saying, well, I don't see a way out, and their way out is to leave. And off the back of that, we're also seeing a reduction and a lack of nurses, social workers, OTs training at university, and that's been a massive impact since they removed the bursary. But even more still since obviously the issues within the NHS are obviously being highlighted daily now, and obviously that kind of deters people from their interest in joining. But yeah, just obviously overall that it's the workforce really that is one of the main issues that we're seeing for the wait times and the other issues as well that we're seeing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, Nobody wants to work for the NHS at the moment, do they? Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Joe. Let's skip on. So Chris, shall I hand over to you?
Thank you. So yeah, I found the process fascinating. I think the thing that has been, having been in the third sector for 26 years in Derbyshire, it was so refreshing to have everyone brought together to look at the problems faced. It just felt brilliant to get that opportunity to all come together. And I put there very responsive leadership because for many reasons it was rare that happened. And the leadership on this initiative, Nikki was one of those leaders, were so willing to listen and hear. They really set the tone for workshops and meetings because there was no judgment or anything. People could say exactly what they wanted to say, express their concerns, parents, professionals, be it a clinician, be it a parent carer forum representative. People could say exactly what they thought. And if you wanted to challenge even the process, you could do that and raise that, and then it would change and it would adapt and tweak into that as it moved forward. I think the second thing that was striking was the fact that there seemed a really genuine desire to co-produce, because I think, as people have mentioned earlier in some of the excellent presentations, co-production, although the word is known, is really quite foreign. And in fact, many of the structures, the legal structures for a start, and then the local authority, etc. structures, can prevent things being discussed in detail in some ways. And so it's not something which was common to come together to do that. But this one, from the outset, there was a desire to co-produce. The only thing was that it's offsetting against that was, of course, having had this inspection and the need to show results quickly also put huge pressure on everyone, and in particular the regulatory authorities needed to move quickly to get results. And so there was a lot of debate around that. If we move quickly, are we not going to just do the same thing again where things don't change because we don't have the time to talk and co-produce? So again, a big kudos to those leading, in the city on this, and those working from the county, was that we managed to agree a two-tier system. So the quick wins and then the longer term development wins, which were then built into the process. But that took a lot of debate and a lot of courage to agree to, from my perspective, but it was agreed to. Boldness of leadership as the initiative came under perceived challenge. From our side as VCSC, probably I may have been more used to some of the challenges that come up and may have read into things as being challenges when they weren't. But the fact is, any big change and anything, especially that's really serious and complex and under pressure, will always come under challenge when you try and say, well, slow down and all talk and let's do this and do that. But the leadership seemed to manage to keep that balance. And I don't know what flack there was that we didn't see, but they kept it and managed to negotiate and keep things moving, and keep all parties happy. And I think that was that boldness, and it was written into the agreement moving forward, that boldness would be one of the key principles. The striking thing was how quickly trust and relationships formed, which over the years they happen, but I've not seen this happen across a whole system so quickly. And I, as someone with a background in development, I do put that down to the openness and the co-production. I think that was a crucial component of bringing people together. And part of that was listening. So everyone could say exactly what they thought. So therefore, you listened to, therefore you're more likely to trust. The great importance of the new learning that came out, for example, parent views were quite different to the typical view of what a model would look like, and talking about, well, I want it to be like a supermarket shelf and pick off the services I need. I don't need this whole thing. I need eating, sleeping, etc. A simple observation like that really massively informed the design. The new learning like that, and the great importance of understanding perspectives, that everyone has different perspectives and we need to listen to all of them and then bring them all together. And I think that was done very well. I've already talked about stopping for dialogue when barriers appeared and not moving on until that was resolved to everyone's satisfaction, and how the silos between organizations started to fall. You know, the traditional everyone working at their own thing. The two-stage system I touched on, I believe, was a big breakthrough, and it was a different way of approaching things. I think CDC commented on that as well. Thank you. So on the next slide. Oh, sorry. Okay. So my personal fears, I really worried as an individual and a lead, because we were working on the steering committee and help contributing to design. I really worried that external pressure would stop the progress, because I've seen that happen so often, where people do start going and they do start getting there, and then somehow this just all gets stopped. I can't tell you how often I've seen that. I worried that the need for speed would slow and stop and affect the quality of co-production. There was also definitely quite a strongly held view that, or belief, level of belief, that this could not work because it was so complex, so big, and had so little resources. That was there at the start, but it slowly started to fade along with the trust and relationships growing. That belief started to change towards a Mandela type statement belief of, you know, things are impossible until they aren't. And that's what I noticed happening here. It seemed impossible, but eventually it wasn't. And then what we could change, we began changing, and that's continued. As a professional, I got to admit, I thought I might lose credibility in terms of what we were chipping in on design and some of the key things. We focus on autism, but we work with co-conditions, but also on design and development. You know, if this was stopped, we were working so closely with the team, it would look like we'd blown it all, especially in terms of slowing down for co-production. And that's where the support of the leadership was crucial and fantastic. Secondly, that I might actually, by my contribution, by our contribution as an organization to design and trying to get even more dialogue, which they wanted, but really spending time to take these other meetings to listen, could cause a high risk to the city in terms of the inspection that they were preparing for, which was really serious. But again, despite the pressures faced, the leaders, you know, gave us that time and support, as did the Derbyshire leaders. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So, so the first thing we did, we listened, got my hard hat on, got in there and started talking, listening to people, and really listened to what they were saying. I think the appreciation that the first time you meet as a group, you're going to get absolutely nothing decided or done, but it's so important that people have the opportunity to have their say, and to say what they need to, and for us to hear it. So that was the scary bit, but the really important bit. If you don't start in that frame, it'll all quickly fall apart. Thanks, Joe. So what we really quickly learned was not what I was expecting. The bit around the reason people were asking for a diagnosis was because it was felt that it would release additional help for them. The number of organisations in Derbyshire is massive. When we started to pull the list together of all the help and support, it was huge and really enthusiastic, great people. So then you start to question, so why isn't this all coming together for families? And what I was really surprised was at not one point did people say to me, we need extra specialist support, we need more NHS specialists, we need more speech and language therapists, we need more, the stuff that I was dreading didn't come up at all. And what we also realized was that we couldn't fix it on our own. If we could have fixed it on our own, we would have fixed it years ago. So I think that was a bit of a realization, really, and actually that this was something that we could tackle. Thanks, Joe. So principles. So I've talked about the anchor, and the anchor is the really important thing to get sorted out from the beginning. I think that brings everyone together and keeps sight of what it is we're trying to do, and being child-centered in what we do. So I won't talk through that. There's a few points in there that we've picked up. Thanks, Joe. And again, our approach, we've listed out some key things there. Is there anything you want to pick up on that? Oh, Chris.
Yeah, I just think releases action. I think, commissioning by nature is about control, impact, value for money, etc. And it's a very tight system, like you're saying, locked room, etc. But it's a system which is foreign to natural production and co-production and releasing energy and passion, etc. So there was something about that in this approach, we wanted to make sure that whatever we did could absolutely create the right environment to release, like a petri dish with the right environment for that bacteria to grow or something, except we're looking at it positively, is that people can grow and thrive fast as providers and suppliers and parents contributing to design and individuals, children, young people, etc. Yeah, thank you.
So at this point, we didn't know how we were going to fix it. We've still got no plans in place. So this is where we started to bring in the model. Did you want to talk through this, Chris?
Okay, thank you. So it's going to, if anyone wants more information on this, you're welcome to contact us and we can spend some time going through. But effectively, we wanted a model that would drive the action so that everyone could take their plug and plug into the adapter and then just be able to move through in synergy. And so we borrowed from this model here, which is an international model used by development agencies, and it looks at how a market works. Now, whilst we're a health system, we're still in a market, and the way things work are very much the same. So in the middle are those who provide all the services. At the top are those who try and make it easier for those who provide the services, but also, of course, govern it to make sure that it's governed properly and legally. So you'll see there the policymakers, cultural considerations, resources, sector associations who try and make it easier. So that's why the arrow pulls upwards, because it helps those delivering the services if it's done properly. And at the bottom, those who might provide the skills and knowledge and extra ways and anything that will help those providers provide better for the people they're providing for. So now, if parents, for example, are involved in directly informing everything, they're instantly a support service because they're helping with all the design and everything that goes. So we thought, okay, how can we get a model like this that allows everyone in the system who wants to do something to improve things to be able to just put their plug in and then join at a logical part, but would also guide our systematic thinking on creating the change we wanted to see. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So we took all the thinking from the workshops. The workshops were iterative, so they moved from one stage to the next, to the next, to the next, and between each we'd taken account of everything that was said and tweaked and changed and went to the next stage. So we had all the information of the action that we wanted to take, but we needed this model that would allow people to plug in so that the whole system was pulling in the same direction, which meant leveraging all the assets, because if you leverage the assets, they become worth a lot more. And if you're short of money, what more would you want than a system like that? So this system here in the middle in purple is the graduated support pathway. So this is the same as that middle section where all the people are delivering support. And that ranges on the left-hand side and the right-hand side to the more voluntary sector type of provision, and in the middle to the more specialist provision. The lines that go, a whole lot of series of lines, are just show the different types of conditions and the different needs that exist. And in the middle of this graduated support pathway, the square shape is actually education, because with children, it takes up a lot of the space. It's really important. But there are many other factors too. So you see in the grey boxes, sort of thriving lives issues like leisure, social, housing, health, financial, criminal justice, employment. These are all areas that are really important and that affect people with conditions. And so in each of those areas, you want people to be able to plug and play, the housing experts, the financial people who can help, the health, etc., criminal justice, and they plug and play in there to help create a much better and much more flowing system. You see at the top to the left, before getting assessment, in the middle when you get assessed, and to the right after you've been assessed. We wanted to make sure that that action that's taken by anybody plugs in at all of those levels to make it really smooth and easy. The last one, the green triangle, was because between the different partners in this, we are talking about health, and that's exceptionally important. You can't play around with the way you work with health. You can't take risks. So we put in that triangle there because we said that where are the risks? Where are the risks big? Well, they're big in the middle. So wherever there's real clinical input required and specialized input, then you need specialized people delivering that, and specialized controls like NICE regulations, etc., over that. As you move outwards to the more social model type work, and the voluntary sector's really represented in the left and right, but we all represented in this. It still remains important, but you don't necessarily have to have a clinical specialist to be working on that. So in this diamond, as you go off to the right and to the left, and as the dark color fades, you're having less requirement for that strict governance and quality controls, but you still want them. So towards the very end, it might just be under 5 ways to well-being to make it easier for those small providers, but it's still watching the quality and how it works. Towards the middle, you're going to be working to NHS specifications on that work. Between the very top, the middle of this triagram and the left, in the middle there, we believe there's a much bigger role for voluntary sector organizations who already shoulder quite a big burden and do some very good work across the board. And so maybe they could integrate a bit slightly further towards the middle under the guidance, co-design and guidance and reviewing of clinical experts. Thank you. We're just going to look at a second aspect to this. This seems very busy because it's brought all the things together now. So the yellow in the middle there is the education component that I described. The blue was a language issue where people had different language for different aspects of the pathway. And we settled on targeted and specialist, and universal as common language. So we put in that common language. Don't worry about the red. That was action learning that was still being looked at. The peach at the bottom said that people, when they enter this pathway, it's not linear. They can go back along, but then they might pull back again because of a setback. And it can go in any direction, but we do need to know and understand that user journey and make it a lot easier for people. The pink near the top, you will see that's in the policy and advocacy, what's guiding everything and making things easier, like policies on funding, making commissioning easier for access to voluntary sector organizations. But we also understood that where communication was critical, and this came up in the pathway as one of the biggest needs. So towards the left, you'll need more general and linking information. In the middle, you need specialized clinical information. And then again, to the right, it'll be more general and opportunity again, as you've had your assessment. Finally, this push-pull that you read there are those arrows. So the policy level at the top, we should all be influencing the policy to make it a much more enabling environment for everyone working in the system, including parents and children. And the last point was just that in all of this, we needed to start with urgently was to align the information. So the quick wins were around information, the information portals and supply of information. And then the development steps are the next ones, looking at these other issues. There's a lot of good work going on and making sure how it plug and plays together. So, for example, now Nikki and the steering group, before it moved into a formal structure, have invited the voluntary sector alliance to now come and plug in within this model, which will be a massive shift into starting to bring more action about. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I've just picked up Tony's comment in the chat, and I was typing a huge response back. So Tony's asked about issues of pre and post support being different in the different places. So we have 2 local authorities in Derbyshire. Yes, it's a challenge, but one of the things that we decided to do jointly is to create some community hubs. There should be 3 in Derbyshire and 1 in Derby City. The idea of the hubs, as well as providing some support of their own, is that they will know that the pre and post support that's out there and be able to signpost families, children and families from there. The learning from those hubs is incredibly important. It's going to hopefully start to identify where things aren't working and where the gaps are, so that will then start to drive what it is we do going forwards. Also minded of the family hubs that are being set up in Derby City and the need for us to link. So we've been being a bit of a pain and inviting ourselves to all those meetings so that we make sure we're linked in. And then communication is probably the biggest weakness in the whole system for us. As I said before, you've got all these organisations and somehow it's just not coming together. So part of the plans is to do some road shows as well to schools and GPs to start to break down those barriers.
And I think the hubs was a top call from the initiative, from parents, carers, and the system actually.
Yeah.
So it was the first of the development stage of the initiative, isn't it?
Yeah, and the plan, we're hoping it will bring together what's already out there. It is creating something new, but it's very much based on what's already there. So I'm just mindful of time, Joe. We're due to finish, aren't we, in a minute? So
yes, that's fine.
Yeah, so I won't read through this. So just in terms of first steps, you can see the list there, and then just making sure that we did the quick wins. So for us, that was some online content and making sure that we had the links through to the voluntary sector. Next slide then, Joe, I think is near the end. So in terms of reflections, we were led by a project management specialist. It became very projecty and people started to lose sight of what it was we were doing. So I think that was probably a bit of a challenge. We've been swept up into the adult system and that can feel like a bit of competition. They're not quite as far advanced as we are and it can feel sometimes like we're being held back, but I think we know what we're doing. We're sticking with it. So in terms of procurement, we openly discuss what services look like, what the specification looks like, and it's at that point then that we go into the closed room and do the procurement. So nothing that's being advertised on procurement the system doesn't already know about, but the actual process of procurement is still being done in a closed room, and we've been dead open and honest about that, and people appreciate that that's just part of what we have to do. So that's been fine. Thanks, Joe. Next slide. So as I've said, communication information is massive, and we need to definitely use the strength that we have in the system. So yeah, next, I think is that it? That's us. Is there anything you want to add, Chris, before we finish up?
No. Just to thank CDC for their role in putting together, helping us put together the first of the outcomes frameworks, etc., which was very valuable. And it had been a worry in case we weren't able to work together. If they hadn't have adopted a co-production approach, we may have had a problem, but they did, and it worked really well. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone. I'll drop my email address in the chat if anyone has anything they want to pick up outside. Oh, Matthew. Sorry,
that was an accident. I meant to wave, not hand up. But there is no wave emoji anyway, don't worry. I'll do that instead. So thank you.
Someone had a question.
There's a couple of questions in the chat.
How did you manage to measure impact against individual needs? So that begins once the delivery phases begin. Yeah. So these are all the design stages which have just started now to hit the ground. In fact, the primary work at the moment is research, which was the other big ticket item that everybody wanted. So we've begun with the research, but expedited the hubs because the need was so great.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you everyone. Just to let everyone know that the second workshops will start at 12:50, so you have a short comfort break before the next one starts. Thank you.
Thank you.